Buying your first e-mountain bike. So many paths to choose from. Motors, batteries, wheel size, frame material, brands, and also such things as hardtails or full suspension. This then is our guide to buying your first e-mountain bike. And so, to get through the minefield of options, we've teamed up with Canyon to help you answer these difficult questions. So I guess a good starting point is, what exactly is a mountain bike? Well, it has grippy tyres, terrain-specific gearing and components, and usually comes with suspension on the front and sometimes on the rear. It's often used in places other than in the mountains, but with the capability of getting to seriously out of the way places when needed. So what is an e-mountain bike? Well, here's two fine examples here. And as you can see, visually, they're almost identical to a mountain bike, except for one thing, well, maybe two things. And that is a motor and a battery located in the down tube, which means that they're actually capable of far steeper hills than mountain bikes. And also, you can decide just how much effort you put into your ride. Now, the main thing to remember with an e-mountain bike, folks, is that you still have to pedal. And normally there is a controller up on the handlebar here, which lets you decide just how much effort you want to put in. A lot of effort or less effort. Now, not to be confused with the more general electric bike tag, an e-mountain bike has a motor which assists you rather than a throttle, which makes it more akin to a motorcycle. Okay, so on most e-mountain bikes, the motor will be located in the middle of the bike between the two wheels, and the battery in the down tube. It will also have a controller, like I mentioned a minute ago, plus a display. Now, on the display, it'll show such things as the battery range, which is pretty much like the fuel gauge on your car, how far you've been, how far you can go, and also what mode you're in, whether you're in eco mode or boost mode. Now, once you've bought your e-mountain bike, a great place to start your adventures could be such places as a trail centre or a bike park, and there are hundreds of them all over the world. Now, they will come with a range of trails from easy up to super hard, and a lot of them will be surfaced, but some will be unsurfaced, so that'll cater for the entry-level rider to the expert level rider, and they'll usually come with a cafe to serve a bacon roll and a coffee as well. So what then are the similarities between an e-mountain bike and a mountain bike? Because after all, they use the same kind of places. Well, an e-mountain bike will have the same size wheels, front and rear, and will be built of the same materials, which is normally carbon or aluminium. They will come with the same type of componentry, such things as the handlebar and the stem and the grips and the disc brakes front and rear, and normally will come in the same range of sizes from small through to extra large. And as with mountain bikes, some e-bikes will come with suspension front and rear, whilst others, such as this Grand Canyon here, will have suspension just on the front. Oh, love it. Absolutely love it. And I think it goes to show that you don't need suspension front and rear to have a great time on an e-mountain bike. Which actually makes me think about the differences between a mountain bike and an e-mountain bike. Well, obviously there's that motor, battery, control and display, which is different, which also means you need to charge an e-mountain bike. But at the same time, it means there's a huge amount of added technology to an e-mountain bike, which you've not got on a mountain bike, hence the slightly more expensive price tag. At the same time, it also means you've got a huge amount of data available, which means you can tinker and tune an e-mountain bike to your heart's content. You can also see the history of your ride, you can measure your heart rate, you can look at your cadence, you can even charge your phone in if you you want to do that kind of thing on an e-mountain bike. So in all, it's a lot more bike than a mountain bike. They are a different weight, although this is not to be confused with a better, lighter weight, but we're talking about 14 kilos on a mountain bike versus about 20 kilos on an e-mountain bike. They can be slightly more expensive. As I mentioned, this is because of the added technology, and we're talking usually about £1,000. And there can be many e-mountain bike specific components such as forks and wheels, and also brakes, which will be larger due to the slightly heavier weight. And if you want to get real tech, certain parts of the geometry will be different. Now, it might be worth pointing out that if you're riding maybe some of the easier waymarked trails, then an e-mountain bike with only front suspension will probably be as fast as an e-mountain bike with suspension front and rear. Which brings us on to the next point, is what do you actually need your e-mountain bike for? So what do you need an e-mountain bike for? Well, an e-mountain bike is best suited to off-road riding, and this can be on tracks such as this, or this. Or you can get really involved in some serious out-of-the-way, off-the-beaten-track terrain. Now, the type of e-mountain bike you buy will be suited to the type of terrain you intend to ride, but I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a bit. Now, should you be riding to work on roads or on cycle paths, you can do this on an e-mountain bike, but many brands offer city, fitness, gravel, road and trekking style e-mountain bikes. And as I mentioned earlier, don't confuse an e-mountain bike with a more general electric bike, because there are many amazing electric bikes which are largely used for commuting. So how then do eMTBs differ from one to another? Here are our 10 key points to consider. First of all, the motor. Now, for off-road use, mid-drive motors are the preferred choice. And this is primarily because of their ability on climbs, the balance they provide in the center of the bike, and also the integration into the frame. There are several key mid-drive motor manufacturers, and in alphabetical order, Bafang, Bosch, Brose, Panasonic, Shimano, TQ and Yamaha. They all come with warranty and do not require any maintenance. Many motors will last for up to 1,000 charges, which equates to about 30,000 kilometers. Should there be any issues, and will not hide the fact that many brands have had teething issues, expect a maximum turnaround of about 10 to 14 days. The power on e-bikes differs, although in general they're not that dissimilar. Torque gives you a useful idea of the bike's power, although think of your eMTB as a system, not just a motor. After all, it's pointless having a powerful motor with a poor frame. Torque numbers will range from 35 Nm up to around 120 Nm. The key point to understand here is that more torque usually equates to more battery consumption, and therefore you'll require a larger battery capacity for the same range. Lower price eMTBs often come with lower capacity batteries, but most eMTBs today will have a battery of between 500 watt-hours and 700 watt-hours. They are capable of up to 1,000 charge cycles or more, so the bottom line is your bike will probably fall apart before the battery does. But it's key to look out for how waterproof your eMTB battery is. Controls are a personal thing. You can either have a super compact setup, as we have here on the Shimano system, or ones that are incredibly detailed and take up more cockpit space. Displays are sometimes part of the controller and sometimes not. Again, you can have a crazy amount of detail. However, even on the most minimalist system, you can still retrieve detail through the sixth important point, which is an app, which, as I mentioned earlier, will give you unheard of levels of information. Now, some motors have an app such as the Shimano one here on the Grand Canyon, which, by the way, will also allow you to tune the motor's characteristics. The two most common wheel sizes are 27.5 or 29 inch. You might hear the term mullet when you're buying your bike. It's nothing more though than mountain bikers making a meal of what's essentially a simple mix of 29 up front and 27.5 on the rear. Now, sizing, as I mentioned earlier, is very, very important, and you have to get the right size for you. So if in doubt, get a second opinion with a brand direct, or even get in touch with us. And here on EMBN, we have lots of videos to help you do just this. Prices of e-mountain bikes vary from about €1,500 for a mid-travel hardtail with only suspension up front to around €6,000 to €10,000 for a carbon fibre full suspension bike. And finally, where do you buy? Well, local bike shops, reputable chain stores, and also direct to your door with such bikes as this Canyon. It simply gets delivered to you, you have the tools provided, and it'll take you about half an hour maximum to get up and running. Okay guys, I'm gonna have a look at some of the things to look out for when you're choosing your first e-mountain bike, and I'm gonna start off with a mid-drive motor, which is pedal assist over a throttle assist bike, because a mid-drive motor is more efficient at climbing, and also, like I said, it's a pedal assist bike, so you can choose whether to go for a high intensity ride or a low intensity ride. Now secondly, sizing. Now there are a load of inconsistencies in the mountain bike industry when it comes to the right size bike for you. However, many brands such as Canyon will give you a really good idea on what size bike will suit you, and you can look at those numbers on their website. However, if you are in between sizes, which most people are, I would recommend you go for the slightly larger bike, because you can adjust the fit of your bike by such things as moving the seat forward or putting a slightly shorter stem on your bike. Now obviously you're going to be using your e-mountain bike in far greater weather conditions than on a mountain bike. You will be out in rain, wind or snow, I guarantee you, which means that obviously waterproofness is a key thing to look for when you're buying an e-mountain bike. But the good news is that most of the reputable brands such as Shimano, Brose, Bosch and Yamaha all have pretty solid waterproof units. Another point is the warranty. Obviously try to get a good warranty on your e-mountain bike plus a good backup service. Now, should something go wrong on a bike such as this Grand Canyon on, when the bike arrives, it comes in a box with the tools and the packaging. So if by any chance there is a problem, you simply put the bike back in the box and it gets collected and it gets fixed. Very, very simple. So, what then are the great things to look for in your first e-mountain bike? Well, I think I'll begin by saying suspension, either front suspension or suspension front and rear, like this Spectral on here. But not just suspension, make sure it is good quality suspension. Secondly, I think a good strong set of wheels and grippy tires to go with that, plus some hydraulic brakes. And I think finally, a silent bike. And to achieve this, you need to have a bike which has got good frame protection, particularly in the chainstay area down by here. And finally, obviously we'll keep the worst until last. Some of the not so great things, some of the things that you really should avoid on an e-mountain bike. And I think, I mentioned before, I think I would avoid a throttle e-mountain bike, particularly in certain countries because of land access issues. And also they're not as versatile. You can't get the workout which you can on a mid-drive e-mountain bike. At the same time, I would probably avoid bolt-on motors too. Now, as much as bolt-on motors are really good and they're really reliable and they provide just as much power as you would from a mid-drive off-the-shelf motor, they do tend to be mounted a little bit lower down, which means they are quite prone to rock strikes and roots. What else have I got on my list of things? Well, poor advice on sizing. Now, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, so I probably covered that off, but please, please try and get the correct advice if you're going to a bike shop on your sizing. When it comes to discs, I would certainly try to avoid cable-operated disc brakes or rim-mounted V-brakes on your e-mountain bike. Certainly go for a good hydraulic disc brake with rotors, which are about 180mm to 200mm radius. A couple of the things on the list here is poor cabling to the motor. Try and avoid e-mountain bikes which you've got cables all over the place. And also hub drives. Now, I love a good hub drive e-mountain bike, but they are not as sophisticated as an off-the-shelf mid-drive pedal assist e-mountain bike. And one final thing, folks, I will guarantee you that you will have an incredible time on your first e-mountain bike, and you will continue to have great times, and you will probably be using an e-mountain bike more often than a mountain bike. But obviously there might be some questions. You guys might have some worries about buying your first e-mountain bike. So please let us know in the comments below, and we will do our best to try and answer those. So that's it. I wish you the best of luck in whatever mountain bike you choose. So that's it. I wish you the best of luck in whatever e-mountain bike you choose. And don't forget to follow us on social media to keep up to date with all the e-mountain bike action.